Meanwhile, a United Nations panel recently implied that the U.S. Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe versus Wade was racist. The Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination says the overturning will have a negative impact on racial and ethnic minorities. The committee also calls on the removal of all legal barriers to abortion. We go now to Rebecca Ost, Director of Research for the Center for Family and Human Rights. Rebecca, thanks so much for joining us. First off, what more can you tell us about this committee, and why is it focusing on abortion and the overturning of Roe versus Wade?
Well, those are excellent questions. As you may know, the United States has not ratified very many of the UN's human rights treaties, in part because we really do take seriously our Constitution and the protections within it for our own people. But one of one of these treaties that we have, in fact, ratified in 1994 is the Convention on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And when you ratify one of these UN treaties, you enter into dialogue with what's called a treaty body, which is an expert group stationed in Geneva that is supposed to basically help you to fulfill your obligations under the treaty and give suggestions on how you can do that. And the U.S. recently had its sort of periodic checkup, as it were, with the treaty body associated with this treaty, and this is where these recommendations are coming from. Now, of course, you should know that this treaty and all of the other UN human rights treaties do not include a right to abortion. This does not exist. And in fact, abortion is not even mentioned in any of these treaties, not by name and not by implication. And so what's happened is that many of the treaty bodies associated with these treaties have really gone far outside their mandate and are pressuring countries to liberalize their abortion laws. We've seen this over the last 20 years or so to an ever-increasing extent. And this particular treaty body on racial discrimination has, in fact, been one of the few that has largely refrained from doing this. And so the fact that they're pressuring the United States right now is unfortunate on many levels. First, because obviously we want to uphold, the equality of all people regardless of race. But the idea that to have pro-life laws is somehow racist is, of course, obviously crazy and false. But the fact that this particular treaty body is now beginning to follow this course is also very unfortunate.
Yeah, it seems very concerning, too. I mean, is anyone pushing back on this language with pro-life counterpoints?
Well, it's a little bit difficult, really. I mean, the United States obviously enters into dialogue with these treaty bodies, on every several years. Of course, the administration that was speaking to them is very much on the same page. The Biden administration has been extremely aggressive, certainly at home and abroad, in promoting a pro-abortion agenda. So I'm sure that this was music to their ears. And of course, we also know that pro-abortion groups, both inside and outside the United States, were submitting their own reports to this treaty body in advance of the United States' review with the idea of trying to get this on the agenda, and clearly they've succeeded.
And Rebecca, I'm curious, where do you see this all going?
Well, the important thing to remember is that the treaty body's opinions and their writings are not binding on any nation. We are bound by the treaties that we ratify, the texts of those treaties themselves, but not by the treaty body's opinions. So this has no power in and of itself. But unfortunately, what we have seen at the level of the United Nations is that these treaty bodies' opinions have been taken up and quoted by other agencies and used to promote abortion. For example, we've seen this most evidently recently at the World Health Organization, which recently released its most aggressive guidance, basically calling for the removal of all restrictions on abortion worldwide, including, attacking the conscience rights of healthcare providers. Now, of course, they can't force any nation to do that. There is no human right to abortion. But, these experts and UN agencies do have a certain amount of weight and credibility still in the world. And so obviously we have to talk about why this is false and why pro-life laws, in fact, in the United States are going to protect more people from racial minorities than anyone else, because we know that in the United States, abortion rates are far higher in particularly the Black community than in other groups. And so the goal here is to save lives, certainly not to racially discriminate.
Yeah, Rebecca, thank you so much for your time and shedding a light on this for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.